Let's see if Trevor Kavanagh can cheer me up, former political editor at The Sun. Hiya, Trev.
Hello, Alex.
Oh, 100 days. It feels like 100 years, doesn't it? I mean, what do you make of this inaugural period of Labour leadership?
Well, it does feel like a long time, but I bet it feels like much longer if you're a member of the Labour cabinet and a member of the government.
Oh.
It's been a nightmare of which there's been no similarity. No other predecessor has gone through this sort of turmoil and despair. And I've spoken to a few new Labour MPs since the election, and they are literally with their heads in their hands, wondering where their future lies.
I mean, where's the problem here? Does it just stop at Starmer? Is he the issue? Is he the one without political nous, without much sort of conviction or ideology or political comprehension? Or does he need to have a look at the people around him in Cabinet and think this lot just aren't fit for purpose?
No, I think you summed it up brilliantly in the opening remark there. It is purely down to Starmer. I mean, everything is down to management, isn't it? He's the leader of the party. He makes the decisions and the appointments. He appointed Sue Gray, and now he's had to sack her. And I think that the person who they really are beginning to ask questions about is no longer Sue Gray, and it actually hasn't been for a while. It is Keir Starmer himself. And it's quite possible to imagine that for the first time in Labour history, the party might eventually, and in the not-too-distant future, wonder whether they can carry on till the next election with Keir Starmer as Prime Minister.
Wow, really? I mean, what sort of mechanisms do they have in place in Labour to get rid of him? Because my understanding is it's sort of quite difficult to oust the top man.
It is. I think that it would need a great deal of muscle coming from unofficial sources, such as the trade union leaders and indeed members of the cabinet. It would be a revolution of sorts. But this is going so badly when you think about just how unpopular the Tories were when they lost office. And now they're only 1 point behind Labour in the opinion polls. And that Keir Starmer himself has plunged to almost humiliation in the polls personally. I think all sorts of questions are being asked about how much longer this can carry on.
Is it? I mean, look, I've got to play devil's advocate. It's kind of a hard job to do. I feel like the devil doing it, frankly. But trying to sort of, balance this out a bit. Some might say that when it came to the riots, for instance, that was almost out of his domain, that he couldn't have foreseen what was going to happen in Southport, and the public reaction to that and simmering tensions and discontent have been going on for a long time as a result of the previous government. Some might also say our economic situation is something that he's inherited. We don't yet know what's going to be in the Labour budget. Some might say, well, accepting all these freebies is not a good look, but all parties do it. Perhaps you shouldn't have been so tough on it before coming into power, but actually if we were to turn our focus over to some of the bits and bobs and trinkets and freebies that Conservative MPs have got during the same amount of time, we'd find as much evidence of enjoying the trappings of politics there as well. And so perhaps we shouldn't give him so much of a hard time, and that there's still a long amount of time for him to realise his dreams, and he's got some great plans for the future.
Well, look, 10 out of 10 there, Alex, for trying. I mean, you were advocating on behalf of the devil, and not a single word you said stands up to close examination. All of the problems you've mentioned are at least partly as a result of Labour in opposition and now in government, and that includes mass immigration, which began under Labour. It includes the economy, which isn't as bad as they pretend. In fact, under Rishi, of the last 2 years of the Rishi government, he actually started putting things back into shape, and he is quite right to say that we have the best growth in Europe. So, and what are they doing? They're putting the dead hand of socialism into that economy, banning our oil exploration, so we have to rely on foreign imports, and the regulation on small and large businesses. I mean, these are going to have catastrophic consequences for employment and the alleged burst of growth that they're promising.
What do you make of the people in his cabinet? I mean, I've learnt that there's going to be no National Security Council seats for Angela Rayner for reasons I don't fully comprehend. She has now been sidelined. Other people are saying, well, perhaps Lammy is going to face the chop as well. Do you think Starmer's going to get to the point that he realises as his popularity continues to wane, he's going to have to do some sort of a reshuffle? And if so, who do you think's going to get the boot?
Well, all of the people you just mentioned deserve to get the boot. I mean, Lammy's been a disaster over the Chagos Islands. Basically, what we're doing, and this is not just Starmer, by the way, this is the Blairites, Tony Blair, Peter Mandelson are pushing for a reset with the Chinese government. They want, I think, to cash in on the huge Chinese economy, which in itself, it is in trouble right now. And we'll end up as part of the Chinese Belt and Road operation, which puts us as a client state to China if we're not very careful. I think that there will be a reshuffle, but I don't think he's in a hurry to do it because it reflects on him. After all, who picked these members of his cabinet? One of the few things that a Labour Prime Minister is able to do is to choose his cabinet ministers. And it's been very clear that Angela Rayner, for one, has been sidelined from the outset, and it won't go down very well with her left-wing supporters in the party.
I mean, it seems to me that communists do like communists, don't they? Trev, going to go on a bit of a tangent here, but do you think enough scrutiny has been done into Sir Keir's past? Because one thing I say on this programme quite a bit is there was such a hullabaloo and noise made about the Bullingdon Club, let's say, and David Cameron's relationships, alleged relationships with the decapitated head of a dead pig, Boris Johnson in this same club, and there's, you know, films like The Riot Club were made and said, oh, we're all Etonized and they all did this, and what did they do at university, what did they drink, and who did they liaise with, and all the rest of it. And then we know that Sir Keir Starmer went to a Soviet workers' camp. I mean, that to me has like all the alarm sounds going off in my head, and yet no one talks about this. Do you think there's something funny going on there?
Well, I think this has been the case for quite a while. You mentioned earlier in your run-up to the half-hour break about your relationship with the BBC, brief as it was. And I think that the BBC is basically a wholly owned subsidiary of the woke Labour Party. They would not, I think, explore any of that sort of material, and do not. But also neither does The Guardian or The Mirror. If anyone looks at it, it's The Telegraph or the Sun and the Daily Mail. So it is a two-tier approach to almost everything, from policing to immigration to the health service. And by the way, I think that your caller, George, just a moment ago, was actually spot on about the insurance or private cover for people who can afford it. In Labour-run Australia, it is a scandal if a senior politician has not got fully comprehensive medical insurance and goes private rather than use their health service, which we want to emulate.
Right, it's fascinating stuff. Trev, listen, poke some people on the floor below me and tell them to start looking into old Red Keir's little jaunt over to what was once known as Czechoslovakia under the stewardship of, as I understand, a Soviet spy. I mean, I just think this stuff beggars belief. I can't believe a man sitting in number 10 that was once, I don't know, hanging out in a workers' camp run by the enemies during the Cold War period. I think that should be front pages everywhere. I want to be reading a book on it. Trev, thank you ever so much. It's great catching up.